Danny Carter kicked the ball across the grass and laughed as it bounced off the garden wall. The 8-year-old boy loved afternoons like this, when the twin sons of New Haven painted the sky orange and pink. His parents were working at the engineering depot, and he had promised to stay in the residential zone until they finished their shift. The colony world had been his home for 3 years now. Before that, he barely remembered Earth. New Haven was all he knew now, with its red soil and purple flowers that grew everywhere. 50,000 people called this place home, farming the land and mining the rich mineral deposits beneath the surface. Commander Alex stood on the security platform overlooking the main settlement. He had been watching the sensors all morning, and something felt wrong. The former Earth military officer had learned to trust his instincts during his 20 years of service. Now he ran the small security force that protected New Haven, just 200 people with light weapons and basic training. The sensors blinked, then they showed something that made his blood run cold. Ships, dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. "Get me a visual," Alex said to the technician beside him. The screen flickered and showed vessels unlike anything in the human fleet. They were angular and dark, with weapons ports that glowed red. Alex had seen enough military ships to know what he was looking at. This was an invasion force. Across the void of space, Captain of the Empire studied the readings from his scout teams. The planet below held only primitive defenses and a scattered population. The species that lived there called themselves humans, and from what his sensors showed, they were weak. "High Admiral," spoke into his communication device. "The target world is confirmed, minimal military presence, no orbital defenses. The humans appear to have no capacity for resistance." The voice of High Admiral came through, filled with satisfaction. "Excellent. This will be a simple conquest. Begin the attack. Show them the power of the Empire. If they surrender quickly, we may spare some of them as workers." Allowed himself a moment of pride. His empire had conquered 47 worlds in the last century. This would be the 48th. The humans had been in space for 200 years, according to galactic records, but they were known only as traders and explorers. They had never shown any military strength. They would learn what it meant to face true warriors. "All ships," commanded. "Begin orbital bombardment. Target their communication systems and spaceports first." Alex was already running toward the alarm station when the first explosions lit up the sky. The communication array on the northern hill erupted in flames. Then the spaceport vanished in a massive blast that sent a mushroom cloud into the atmosphere. "Sound the evacuation alarm," Alex shouted. "Get everyone to the underground bunkers now." The sirens began to wail across New Haven. People poured out of their homes and workplaces, confused and terrified. Many of them had never seen combat. They were farmers, miners, teachers, and engineers. They had come here for a peaceful life on the frontier. Dr. Lisa Morgan grabbed her medical kit and ran toward the hospital entrance. The 50-year-old doctor had spent her whole career saving lives. She had never imagined she would need to treat war casualties. But as the explosions continued and injured people began arriving, she pushed aside her shock and did what she had trained to do. "Set up triage in the lobby," she called to her staff. "Everyone who can walk gets directed to the bunkers. Critical cases get stabilized first." Danny was halfway home when the sky began to burn. He stood frozen, watching the trails of fire arc down from space. His mother had told him about wars, about the old days on Earth when humans fought each other. But that was history. That was not supposed to happen anymore. Danny runned. His father was sprinting toward him from the depot. Danny started running, and his father scooped him up. They ran toward the nearest bunker entrance as more explosions shook the ground. All around them, people were screaming and fleeing. They almost made it. The plasma bolt hit the ground 30 feet away. The shockwave threw them both through the air. Danny felt his father's arms wrapped around him, protecting him as they tumbled across the red soil. When they stopped rolling, Danny opened his eyes and looked up at his father's face. His father was not moving. Blood ran from a wound on his head. His eyes were open but saw nothing. "Dad," Danny's voice was small. "Dad, please get up." Hands grabbed Danny and pulled him away. Someone was shouting that they had to reach the bunkers. Danny screamed for his father as strangers carried him into the darkness of the underground tunnels. The landing craft touched down in the settlement square 2 hours later, stepped out and surveyed the destruction with satisfaction. Fires burned across the colony. Bodies lay in the streets. The humans had tried to evacuate, but many had not made it. His soldiers spread out, searching buildings and dragging survivors from their hiding places. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and large eyes adapted to their low gravity. They moved with confidence, weapons ready, expecting no real resistance. "Round up the survivors," ordered. "Separate the workers from those with military training. Execute anyone who resists." In the security bunker deep underground, Alex watched the video feeds from the few cameras still working. His hands were shaking with rage. He counted the bodies. He saw soldiers shooting people who tried to run. He saw them dragging children away from their parents. 3,000 civilians dead in the first attack. 200 of them were children. Alex turned to his communication officer. "Can you get a signal out?" "The main array is destroyed, sir. But I can try a tight beam transmission to the nearest relay station. It might get through." "Do it, send this message. New Haven under attack. Alien force, they killed our children." Alex paused, then added, "Tell them to come with everything we have." The message shot into space, a narrow beam of encoded data that slipped past the jamming. It would take days to reach Earth, but it would reach Earth. Lisa Morgan worked through the night in the underground hospital. She had 60 wounded and not enough supplies. Danny Carter was among them, physically unharmed but in deep shock. He sat in a corner, not speaking, not crying, just staring at nothing. She wanted to comfort him. She wanted to tell him everything would be fine. But Lisa Morgan had never been good at lying. On the surface, composed his report to the High Admiral. New Haven colony secured. Human resistance was negligible. Total casualties, 0. This species poses no threat to the Empire. I recommend we proceed with the planned expansion into their territory. They will fall easily. Received the message in his command ship and felt pleased. The humans were weak, just as he had suspected. Their peaceful reputation was not a cover for hidden strength. It was simply the truth. They were a soft species that would be easily brought under control. He had no way of knowing that he had just made the worst decision in the history of his empire. Light years away, in the heart of Earth's solar system, Admiral Shaw stood in the command center of the United Nations Space Command. He was reading the message from New Haven for the third time. His face was carved from stone. Around him, officers waited in silence. They knew that look. They had seen it before in old videos from Earth's bloody past. It was the look of a soldier who had just been given a reason to go to war. "Get me the Security Council," Shaw said quietly. "Tell them we have a situation and start recalling our fleets." He looked at the message again, at those final words about dead children. "Tell them humanity is going to war." In the bunker on New Haven, Danny Carter finally spoke. He looked up at Dr. Morgan with eyes that had aged years in a single day. "Will someone make them pay for what they did?" Lisa did not know how to answer. She did not believe in revenge. She had spent her life healing, not hurting. But as she looked at this child who had lost everything, she found herself hoping that someone would indeed make the pay. She had no idea that her wish was about to come true in ways that would terrify the entire galaxy. Admiral Shaw walked into the emergency session of the United Nations Security Council 12 hours after receiving the message from New Haven. Every seat was filled. Diplomats from every major human colony world had connected by video link. The room buzzed with urgent conversations that died the moment Shaw entered. He was 63 years old and had commanded the human fleet for 15 years. In all that time, he had never fired a shot in anger. Humanity had been at peace for 2 centuries, not because they were weak, but because they had chosen to be peaceful. That choice was about to end. "Show them," Shaw said to his aide. The main screen lit up with footage from New Haven. The orbital bombardment, the civilian casualties, the soldiers executing people who tried to flee, the pile of small bodies near the school. Senator Maria Collins from Mars Colony put her hand over her mouth. She was a lifelong pacifist who had built her career on promoting peaceful exploration. "Surely, there must be a diplomatic solution. We should contact the Galactic Council and file a formal protest." Shaw turned to her slowly. "A protest? 3,000 of our people are dead, Senator, 200 children, and you want to file a protest." "We cannot simply start a war," Collins insisted. "We have been peaceful for 2 centuries. The galaxy knows us as traders and explorers. If we respond with violence, we become no better than them." "We have been peaceful," Shaw agreed, But the galaxy has forgotten what we were before that. He gestured to his aide again. Show them the rest. The screen changed. Images began flowing past. Ancient Earth history, the world wars, the nuclear age, the genetic modification programs that had created the first enhanced soldiers, the weapons systems that had nearly destroyed humanity before they finally chose peace. We stopped fighting each other, Shaw said quietly, because we got too good at it. We built weapons that could crack planets. We created soldiers who could fight for days without rest. We perfected tactical doctrine through 10,000 years of constant warfare. Then we looked at what we had become and we chose to stop. We chose peace. He turned back to Senator Collins. But we never forgot how to fight. We just hoped we would never need to remember. Ambassador Henry spoke from his position at the Galactic Council. He was connecting from the council chambers, looking tired and angry. I have been trying to get the council to intervene. They refuse. The Empire is a major power. The council does not want to antagonize them over what they are calling a minor border incident. A minor incident, Shaw repeated. They killed our children and the galaxy calls it a minor incident. The council operates on consensus, explained. Most species have never experienced war the way humans have. They see thee as a legitimate military power. They see us as merchants who got in the way of expansion. They are suggesting we negotiate a settlement. Shaw was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at. Recall all our diplomats, every human representative at the council, every trade mission, every embassy. Bring them all home. Admiral, if we withdraw from the council, we isolate ourselves politically, protested. They have already isolated us by refusing to act. When you leave, give them one message from me. Tell them they had a chance to stop this peacefully. Tell them they chose not to. Tell them to remember that. Shaw turned back to the Security Council. I am asking for authorization to mobilize the full human fleet, every ship, every marine, every fighter pilot. I am asking permission to go to war. How many ships are we talking about? Asked the representative from Europa Station. 200 warships, Shaw replied. 50,000 Marines, 500 fighter craft, another 1,800 ships in reserve if we need them. The room went silent. Senator Collins stared at him. We have that many military vessels. We are a peaceful civilization. Why do we have a fleet that size? Because we learned from history, Shaw said. We choose peace, but we maintain the ability to defend that choice. Every cargo ship in our fleet has weapons hidden in its hull. Every colony transport can be converted to a troop carrier. We have kept our military capability secret for 2 centuries, hoping we would never need it. He brought up another display. The Empire has conquered 47 worlds in the last century. They are expanding rapidly. They chose to attack us because they thought we were weak. They thought our peaceful reputation meant we could not fight. We are going to teach them the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of violence. The vote was called. It was not unanimous. Senator Collins voted against military action until the end, but the majority sided with Shaw. Humanity was going to war. On Mars, the shipyards went into full production mode. On Titan, the marine training facilities activated their emergency protocols. On Europa, the fighter wings began combat drills. Across human space, millions of people who had lived their entire lives in peace began preparing for war. Lieutenant Greg Palmer was in the pilot-ready room when the alert came through. He was 26 years old and had never fired his weapons outside of training exercises. He flew a Mark VII interceptor, the fastest fighter in the human fleet. He had always thought of himself as a glorified police officer, patrolling trade routes and responding to distress calls. Now he was being ordered to the New Haven system as part of the assault force. Think we will really see combat? Asked his wingman, a young pilot named. We are about to find out, Greg replied, checking his flight suit. Colonel Moore assembled her special operations team in the briefing room. She was 42 years old and had spent her entire career training for missions that she had never expected to fly. Her specialty was insertion and extraction from hostile territory. She had practiced it 1,000 times. She had never done it for real. Our mission is to get to New Haven ahead of the main fleet, she told her 12 operators. We infiltrate the colony, make contact with any survivors, and gather intelligence on positions. When the fleet arrives, we guide the assault from the ground. Rules of engagement, asked her second-in-command, a tough sergeant named Bill. There are no friendly on that planet, said coldly. They killed our people. They executed children. I am not going to lose sleep if a few of them do not make it to trial. The team nodded. They were professionals, but they were also human. They had seen the footage. They had their own families. This was personal. The human fleet began gathering at the staging point beyond Neptune. 200 ships, ranging from massive carriers to small frigates. They had been scattered across human territory, disguised as cargo vessels and science ships. Now they revealed their true nature. Admiral Shaw stood on the bridge of his flagship, the carrier Liberty. Around him, his officers worked efficiently, preparing for the first major human military operation in 2 centuries. "All ships report ready, sir," his executive officer reported. Shaw studied the tactical display. New Haven was 3 weeks away at maximum hyperspace speed. They would not be expecting them. They thought they had conquered a weak colony. They had no idea what was coming. "Send the fleet order," Shaw commanded. "All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. Destination, New Haven, rules of engagement. They attacked without warning or declaration. They killed civilians and children. They have rejected all diplomatic solutions. As of now, any military vessel or installation is a valid target. We are not there to conquer. We are there to rescue our people and teach them a lesson they will never forget." He paused, then added, "Let them see what happens when you wake a sleeping giant." The fleet entered hyperspace in a coordinated jump. 200 ships vanished from normal space, heading toward New Haven at speeds that bent reality itself. On New Haven, the occupation was entering its 2nd week, had established control over the main settlement, and was systematically searching for survivors in the underground bunkers. He had found several so far and executed the adults, keeping only the children as potential workers. He did not understand why the humans were being so stubborn. Several groups had tried to fight back with improvised weapons. His soldiers had killed them easily. These creatures seemed to have no concept of when they were beaten. In the security bunker, Alex was organizing what resistance he could. He had 50 people with weapons and maybe another 100 who could fight if needed. Against an occupation force of 400, they stood no chance in a direct fight. But Alex had not been planning a direct fight. He had been planning something else. "They patrol the same routes every day," he told his people, pointing at a map. "They think we are beaten. They have gotten careless. Tomorrow night we hit their fuel depot, nothing big, just enough to make them nervous." Lisa Morgan was listening from the medical bay. "Alex, if you attack them, they will retaliate. They will kill more civilians." "They are already killing civilians," Alex said quietly. "At least this way we go down fighting." In the corner, Danny Carter was watching the adults talk. He did not speak much anymore. He spent most of his time drawing pictures, pictures of his parents, pictures of the soldiers, pictures of the explosions. Lisa worried about him. She worried about all the children. They had seen too much. They would carry these scars forever. If they survived long enough to carry anything. 3 weeks later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Haven system. Admiral Shaw stood on his bridge and looked at the tactical display. 50 ships were in orbit around the planet, confident and unprepared. "Send a message," Shaw said. "No encryption, I want them to hear this clearly." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Shaw spoke into the microphone, his voice carrying to every ship in the system. "This is Admiral Shaw of the United Nations Space Command. You have attacked a human colony without provocation. You have killed 3,000 civilians, including 200 children. You have rejected all diplomatic solutions. As of this moment, a state of war exists between humanity and the Empire. You have 30 seconds to surrender your vessels. If you refuse, we will destroy you." On his flagship, listened to the message with disbelief. "A state of war? They are merchants. How many ships do they even have?" His sensor officer looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, I am reading 200 contacts. They are warships. They are all warships." Felt cold fear for the first time in his career. "That is impossible. Our intelligence said they had no military fleet." "Apparently our intelligence was wrong," his tactical officer said. The 30 seconds expired. Did not surrender, his pride would not allow it. Admiral Shaw nodded to his weapons officer. "Fire!" First volley from the human fleet was not a warning shot, it was a statement. 20 ships vanished from existence in the first 3 seconds. The electromagnetic mounted on human destroyers fired solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. At those velocities, Each round carried more kinetic energy than a nuclear weapon. The shields, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, might as well have been paper. "Impossible," shouted as his sensors showed half his fleet simply disappearing. "Return fire, all ships, return fire." The vessels began launching their plasma torpedoes and particle beams. They were effective weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. Against human ships, they barely scratched the armor. Admiral Shaw watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. "Launch fighters. All squadrons, you are cleared to engage." Lieutenant Greg Palmer felt his interceptor launch from the carrier bay with a kick that would have broken the bones of most alien species. Humans from Earth had evolved under gravity that was considered extreme by galactic standards. Their ships reflected that reality, with acceleration that would kill a pilot outright. "Red Squadron, form up on me," Greg commanded, his hands dancing over the controls. "We are going after those destroyers on the left flank." His fighter could pull maneuvers that would black out a normal human. Greg and his fellow pilots had been through years of training and genetic optimization. They could handle forces that would turn most species into paste. The interceptors came to meet them. They were fast and well-armed. They just were not fast enough. Greg watched his targeting computer track the enemy fighters. They moved in predictable patterns, following standard military doctrine. Greg had studied hundreds of years of human fighter tactics, from the dogfights of ancient Earth to modern space combat. He knew every trick in the book. They were about to learn that humans had written that book through thousands of years of killing each other. "Fox 3, Greg said calmly, launching a missile. It streaked across space and caught a fighter that tried to evade. The explosion was brief and bright. One down. Around him, the rest of Red Squadron was tearing through the enemy formation. They were brave and they were skilled. They were just outmatched by pilots from who had faster reflexes, better training, and ships that could outturn anything in the galaxy. In 7 minutes, Red Squadron had destroyed 18 fighters without losing a single pilot. On the planet's surface, Alex heard the explosions in orbit and allowed himself a small smile. "That is our fleet. They came." He grabbed his radio. "All resistance units prepare for action. When our people land, I want us ready to support them." Lisa Morgan was watching the sky through a periscope, seeing the flashes of weapons fire high above. Part of her, the part that had devoted her life to saving people, was horrified by what she was witnessing. Another part, the part that had seen too many dead children, wanted them to pay for what they had done. In the command center of the occupation, a young officer burst in with panic in his voice. "Commander, we are receiving reports from orbit. The human fleet is destroying us. We have lost 37 ships. The humans are asking for our surrender." Could not believe what he was hearing. These were merchants, traders, peaceful explorers. How could they have a military force this powerful? "How many human casualties?" he demanded. 3 ships damaged, no confirmed kills." Felt his world collapsing. In less than an hour, the human fleet had achieved orbital superiority. His invasion force was being systematically destroyed. He did what any cornered predator would do. He gave a desperate order. "Gather the human prisoners. Bring them to the central square. Contact the human fleet and tell them if they do not withdraw immediately, we will execute all hostages." On the Liberty, Admiral Shaw received the message, and his expression did not change. "Tell Captain that he already killed 3,000 civilians. Another few hundred will not make us stop. Tell him he is just adding to his war crimes. And tell him we have special forces on the ground, so his hostages will not save him." Stared at his communication officer in confusion. Special forces? When could they have possibly landed forces? He got his answer 15 minutes later. Colonel Moore and her team had dropped from orbit 3 days before the main fleet arrived. They had used stealth pods that were virtually undetectable, landing far from the occupied zones. They had spent 72 hours moving through the wilderness, avoiding patrols, making contact with the resistance. Now they were positioned around the command center, with a perfect view of everything happening inside. "I count 80 hostiles in the main building," whispered into her radio. "Another 30 in the courtyard. They are gathering civilians in the square. Rules of engagement are weapons free. We go in 60 seconds. Her team was spread across 6 positions, 12 humans against 110 soldiers. By galactic standards, those were terrible odds. By human special forces standards, it was a fair fight. Remember, added, these people killed children, no mercy. Sergeant Bill was positioned on a rooftop with a sniper rifle. He could see through the window of the command center, barking orders at his subordinates. Bill had a daughter back on Earth. She was 9 years old, the same age as several of the kids killed in the initial attack. I have a shot on the commander, Bill reported. Negative, replied. We want him alive for trial, but everyone else is fair game. On my mark, 3, 2, 1, execute. The night erupted with violence. Bill's first shot took out the soldier guarding the hostages. His second shot dropped the communications officer before he could send a warning. His third shot shattered the door control, sealing some of the inside. And her assault team burst through the main entrance. The turned to face them, weapons rising. They were well-trained soldiers from a military empire. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had never fought humans before. Moved like water, her enhanced reflexes and earthborn strength making her faster than any could track. She fired her weapon with perfect accuracy, each shot dropping a target. Her team moved with her, flowing through the building like a deadly tide. They tried to fall back to defensive positions. It did not help. Human tactics were built on thousands of years of urban warfare. His team used grenades to flush enemies from cover, used suppressing fire to control movement, and used their superior speed and strength to dominate every engagement. In the courtyard, the soldiers guarding the hostages suddenly found themselves under attack from 3 directions. They tried to return fire, but they were shooting at shadows. The human operators used the darkness, used the terrain, used every advantage their training had taught them. Alex and his resistance fighters heard the gunfire and moved in to support. They were not special forces, but they knew the ground and they knew how to fight. They hit them from behind, catching them in a crossfire. The battle lasted 9 minutes. When it ended, 83 soldiers were dead. The remaining 27 had surrendered, including. Stood over the commander, her weapon pointed at his head. He was bleeding from a wound in his shoulder, staring up at her with something like disbelief. How, he gasped, how did 12 of you defeat an entire garrison? Looked at him without pity. You are from a light-gravity world with no major predators. Your people evolved in paradise. We are from a planet that spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything that lived on it. We evolved in hell. Every predator on Earth was faster, stronger, or more deadly than us. So we learned to be smarter. We learned to be meaner. We learned to work together. We spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. You just gave us a common enemy. She turned to Alex. Commander, are the civilians secure? Alex nodded. We are getting them to the bunkers now. Some injuries, but no new casualties. Good, activated her radio. Admiral Shaw, this is ground team. The colony is secure. Hostages are safe. We have prisoners, including the occupation commander. Shaw's voice came back, filled with satisfaction. Outstanding work, Colonel. Hold position. The fleet is cleaning up the last orbital resistance. We will have ships on the ground in 2 hours. In orbit, the last vessels were surrendering. Out of 50 ships, only 7 remained intact. The rest were debris fields or hulks drifting in space. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. Lieutenant Greg Palmer landed his fighter on the Liberty and climbed out. He was exhausted but alive. His hands were shaking slightly as the adrenaline wore off. He had killed 11 enemy fighters in the last hour. He had taken lives. He told himself they were enemy combatants. He told himself they attacked first. He told himself it was war. It still felt heavy. On the ground, Lisa Morgan was treating wounded prisoners. Some of her staff had questioned why they were helping the enemy. Lisa had given them a simple answer. We are doctors. We help everyone. That is what makes us different from them. But even as she worked, she could not stop thinking about the children who had died. She could not stop seeing Danny's face when he lost his parents. She wanted to heal everyone. She also wanted the people responsible to face justice. Maybe both things could be true. Danny Carter was found in one of the bunkers by his team. He looked up at the soldier with empty eyes. Did you kill them? Did you kill the bad ones? Knelt down to his level. She wanted to tell him that violence was not the answer. She wanted to tell him that revenge would not bring his parents back. But she had just spent the last hour proving that sometimes violence was the only answer. Yes, she said quietly. We killed the ones who would not surrender. The rest will face trial. Danny nodded slowly. Good. 2 hours later, human transports began landing. Marines in full combat armor deployed across the colony, securing the area and beginning rescue operations. Admiral Shaw came down personally to survey the situation. He met with Alex Moore and Lisa Morgan in the temporary command center. "Casualty report?" Shaw asked. 3,000 civilians dead from the initial attack, Alex reported. Another 200 died during the occupation. We have approximately 500 wounded. Casualties, Shaw continued. 92 dead, 27 captured, said. Most of those deaths were from the rescue operation. Shaw nodded slowly. "I am about to do something that might upset some people. I want to know your thoughts first. I am going to take the commander back to Earth for trial. But before I do, I want him to see what he caused. I want him to walk through what is left of this colony. I want him to stand in front of the graves. I want him to look at the faces of the children he killed. Do you think that is wrong?" Lisa Morgan spoke first. "I think the families of the dead deserve to see the person responsible face what he did." Alex agreed. "These attacked us because they thought we were weak. Maybe they need to understand what they destroyed." Shaw made his decision. The next day, under heavy guard, was brought to the colony cemetery where the dead were being buried. He was forced to watch as each body was laid to rest. He was forced to stand there as Danny Carter, a small boy with haunted eyes, placed flowers on his parents' graves. Finally understood. He had not conquered a weak species. He had attacked a sleeping giant, and that giant was now very, very awake. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the Battle of New Haven. Representatives from 73 species filled the grand chamber, their voices echoing in a dozen different languages through translation devices. The circular room had been designed to promote equality and cooperation. Today it felt more like a courtroom. Ambassador Henry walked to the center platform alone. He had spent 20 years building relationships with other species, promoting human trade and culture, working toward peaceful cooperation. Now he was about to burn all of that to the ground. Council Speakerin, a tall creature from the Zephyr Collective, spoke first. His translated voice carried disappointment. "Ambassador, we have called this emergency session to address human military aggression in the New Haven incident. The Galactic Council has received numerous complaints about the excessive force used by human forces. We demand an explanation." "Excessive force," repeated slowly. He touched a control on his wrist device. The chamber's main displays lit up with footage from New Haven, the orbital bombardment, the dead children, the executed civilians. The chamber fell silent. 3,000 civilians, said quietly. 200 children. The Empire attacked without warning, without provocation, without mercy. They did this to a peaceful colony world. Where were your concerns about excessive force then? The action was regrettable, and replied, though his tone suggested he found the discussion uncomfortable. However, the human response was disproportionate. You destroyed 43 military vessels. You killed over 2,000 soldiers. This level of violence is unprecedented in modern galactic affairs. Felt his temper rising. Unprecedented. The Empire has conquered 47 worlds in the last century. How is that not unprecedented violence? The expansions were conducted through legitimate military operations, said Representative X, the ambassador. He was a thin, gray-skinned alien who sat with rigid pride despite his empire's recent defeat. They were strategic acquisitions of undeveloped territories. Your people were in the way of our expansion. You should have negotiated. We tried to negotiate, said coldly. Your military commander rejected all diplomatic attempts. He told us to surrender or die, so we chose a third option. We won. You revealed a hidden military fleet, and said, for 200 years, humanity claimed to be a peaceful species focused on trade and exploration. Yet you had 2,000 warships hidden in your merchant fleet. This deception is troubling to the Council. Laughed a harsh sound that made several representatives flinch. Deception? We maintained a defensive capability. Every species in this chamber has a military. The Zephyr Collective has 800 warships. The Union has over 1,000. But we are deceptive because we kept ours secret. The scale of your response troubles many members, and continued. There are concerns about human aggression. Some species worry about your military capacity. We are considering sanctions to ensure this does not happen again. Sanctions? Let the word hang in the air. Then he smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. Let me tell you something about humanity. Let me tell you what the just learned the hard way. He brought up new footage on the displays, historical records from Earth, wars spanning thousands of years, weapons that could level cities, conflicts that killed millions. My species spent 10,000 years fighting each other. We invented warfare, we perfected it. We created weapons that could crack planets. We built machines of war that would terrify every species in this chamber. And then, 200 years ago, we looked at ourselves and decided to stop. We chose peace, not because we were weak, because we were too strong. The chamber was absolutely quiet now. Every representative was staring at the screens, seeing humanity's violent past laid bare. We have been peaceful for 2 centuries, continued. We traded fairly, we followed your laws, we caused no trouble, and when they attacked us, we came to you for help. We filed formal complaints. We requested council intervention. What did you do? He looked directly at N. You called it a minor border incident. You told us to negotiate. You stood by and watched as our people died, so do not talk to me about excessive force. Do not lecture me about military aggression. You had a chance to stop this peacefully. You chose not to. Ambassador, this tone is unacceptable, and began. No, interrupted. What is unacceptable is a galactic council that protects strong empires while ignoring attacks on weaker species. What is unacceptable is demanding restraint from victims while coddling aggressors. What is unacceptable is 3,000 dead civilians, and your first concern is about hurt feelings of the empire that killed them. Representative X stood angrily. The empire will not tolerate this insult. We demand the council impose sanctions on humanity immediately. By all means, sanction us, said. Cut off trade, restrict our access to council space. See what happens to your economies when human ships stop moving goods across the galaxy. See what happens when the species we protect are left to face empires like yours without our help. You protect no one, X snapped. You are merchants and explorers who got lucky in one battle. Pulled up another display. This one showed the full composition of the human military, 2,000 ships in various states of readiness. Weapons systems that were generations beyond galactic standard. Training programs that would break most species. Population numbers that dwarfed most galactic civilizations. The representatives stared at the numbers with growing horror. We have been in space for 200 years, said softly. In that time we have built the largest fleet, the most advanced weapons, and the most capable military in the known galaxy. We did it quietly. We did it carefully. We did it because we learned from our own history. We knew that someday someone would mistake our kindness for weakness. Today, they learned what happens when you make that mistake. This is a threat to galactic stability, and said, his voice shaking slightly. No, this is a promise of galactic stability. We do not want an empire. We do not want to conquer anyone. We want to live in peace. But we will defend ourselves, and we will defend anyone else who needs it, because that is what we have always done. We protect the weak. We stand against bullies, and we do not forgive attacks on our children. The vote was called on sanctions against humanity. It required a 2/3 majority. The vote failed spectacularly. 61 species voted against sanctions. 12 voted for them. Most of those 12 were allies of the Empire. Left the chamber without another word. As he walked out, he passed a representative from a small species called the... They were a peaceful people who had been conquered by the 30 years ago and forced into tributary status. The representative touched his arm gently. Thank you, she whispered, for showing them that predators can be stopped. Nodded and continued walking. He had work to do. Light years away, High Admiral was dealing with a crisis. The defeat at New Haven had been humiliating, but it was just one colony world. The Empire was vast. They had 50,000 ships across their territory. Surely they could crush these upstart humans if they committed their full strength. His military advisors were not as confident. High Admiral, our intelligence estimates were completely wrong, his chief strategist said. The humans have been hiding their true military capacity for 200 years. They are not merchants. They are a warrior species pretending to be peaceful. We outnumber them 25-1, insisted. Numbers matter in warfare. With respect, High Admiral, not against an enemy like this. Look at the battle reports from New Haven. They destroyed 43 of our ships and lost none. Their fighters outperformed ours by a factor of 3-1. Their tactics were generations beyond ours. This is not an enemy we can defeat through numbers alone. Slammed his hand on the table. Are you suggesting we surrender? The Empire does not bow to anyone. I am suggesting we reconsider this conflict, the strategist said carefully. Perhaps we can reach a settlement, pay reparations, apologize for the misunderstanding. Never stood. We are the dominant military power in this region. We will not be intimidated by these humans. Mobilize the fleet, all of it. 50,000 ships. We will crush them completely and show the galaxy that the Empire is not to be trifled with. His advisors exchanged worried glances but said nothing. The order was given. On Earth, Admiral Shaw received intelligence reports about the mobilization. He called a meeting with his senior commanders. They are committing everything, he told them. 50,000 ships, every vessel they have. They intend to invade human space and force us to surrender. Can we defend against that many? Asked General Frank Pierce, commander of the Marine Corps. We do not need to defend, Shaw replied. We need to teach them a lesson they will never forget. They attacked our civilians, they killed our children, now they are doubling down. We are going to show them the cost of their pride. He pulled up a tactical display showing the fleet's likely approach route. They will come through the Terra Nova system. It is the most direct route to Earth. We will be waiting for them there. How many ships should we deploy? Asked Admiral Laura Mitchell, commander of the Second Fleet. 800, Shaw said. Everything we have in the core systems. We maintain defensive positions at the colonies, but we put our main strength at Terra Nova. 800 against 50,000, General Pierce looked skeptical. Even with our advantages, those are extreme odds. They think they can frighten us with numbers, Shaw said. We are going to teach them something we learned in 10,000 years of warfare. Numbers do not win battles. Training wins battles. Tactics win battles. Will wins battles. And right now, we have more will than they can possibly imagine. On New Haven, life was slowly returning to normal. The dead had been buried. The wounded were healing. Reconstruction had begun on damaged buildings. Danny Carter sat in Dr. Lisa Morgan's office for his daily counseling session. He was drawing again. Today he was drawing a picture of a human soldier standing between a child and a monster. That is a good drawing, Lisa said gently. Who is that soldier? It is the lady who saved me, Danny replied. Colonel Moore, she killed the bad aliens, she protected us. Lisa studied the picture. Are you glad she killed them? Danny thought about it for a long time. I wish they had not come. I wish my parents were alive. I wish nobody had to die, but they did come, and someone had to stop them. He looked up at Lisa with eyes that were too old for his face. Is it wrong that I am glad she stopped them? No, Lisa said softly. It is not wrong. Sometimes bad people do bad things, and sometimes the only way to stop them is with force. That does not make you a bad person for being glad they were stopped. She struggled with her own feelings as she said it. She had always believed in peace. She still did. But she had also seen what happened when evil people faced no resistance. Maybe both things could be true. Maybe you could love peace and still be willing to fight for it. Alex had been appointed temporary governor of New Haven while the colony rebuilt. He spent his days coordinating reconstruction efforts and his nights thinking about what had happened. He had been a soldier once. Then he had retired and tried to be something else. Now he was a soldier again, and he was not sure how he felt about that. Part of him had enjoyed the fight. That scared him. Ambassador returned to Earth for a meeting with Admiral Shaw. They met in Shaw's office overlooking the shipyards where the fleet was preparing for the coming battle. They are not backing down, reported. They are coming with everything they have. Pride will not let them negotiate. Then we will have to break that pride, Shaw replied. We will defeat their fleet so completely that they will never think about attacking us again. And after that, asked. After we win this war, what then? The galaxy has seen what we are capable of. They are afraid of us now. Shaw was quiet for a moment. Let them be afraid. Fear will keep them honest. We tried being friendly. We tried being peaceful. It got 3,000 of our people killed. Maybe it is time we stop pretending to be something we are not. And what are we? Asked. Shaw looked out at the fleet. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are a species that clawed its way to the top of the food chain on the deadliest planet in the galaxy. We choose peace when we can. But when someone threatens our children, we remind them why we are the apex predators of Earth. The fleet began moving toward human space. 50,000 ships, filled with soldiers who believed in their empire's superiority. They were about to learn a hard lesson about the difference between military power and military excellence. The galaxy was watching. What happened next would reshape the balance of power for generations to come. The Armada arrived at the Terra Nova system like a swarm of locusts. 50,000 ships spread across the void of space, their formation stretching for millions of kilometers. High Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship and felt satisfaction wash over him. This force was unstoppable. The humans would see these numbers and surrender immediately. Then his sensors detected the human fleet waiting for them. 800 contacts, his sensor officer reported. They are in defensive formation around the fourth planet. Allowed himself a cold smile. 800 against 50,000. They are either brave or foolish. Open a communication channel. Let me offer them a chance to surrender with dignity. The channel opened. Admiral Shaw appeared on the screen, his face carved from stone. "High Admiral," Shaw said. "You have entered human territory with a hostile fleet. Turn back now or be destroyed." Laughed, "Admiral Shaw, look at your sensors. You are outnumbered 60 to 1. I have brought the full might of the Empire. Surrender now and we will show mercy. Continue this foolish resistance and we will destroy every human world." "You tried that at New Haven," Shaw replied. "It did not work out well for you. Last chance, turn back." "You are bluffing," said. "No force can stand against this armada." He cut the channel and turned to his fleet commander. "All ships, attack formation, destroy the human fleet." The armada surged forward like a tidal wave of steel and fire. The Battle of Terra Nova would be studied in military academies for centuries. It would become the textbook example of how superior tactics and training could defeat overwhelming numbers. The human fleet did not charge forward to meet them. Instead, they fell back in perfect formation, drawing the enemy fleet into the gravity well of Terra Nova's largest moon. They followed, confident in their numerical advantage. They did not realize they were being herded. "All ships execute Thermopylae Protocol," Shaw commanded. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The first group held the center, absorbing the brunt of the attack. The second and third groups swung wide, using the moon's gravity to whip around its far side at tremendous speed. They found themselves suddenly boxed in. The moon blocked their retreat. The human fleet surrounded them on 3 sides, and the ships in the center opened fire. Lieutenant Greg Palmer was flying his interceptor in the second wave of fighters. He had studied the great space battles of human history. He recognized what Admiral Shaw was doing. This was Cana, the ancient Roman battle adapted for space warfare. Surround the enemy, cut off their escape, destroy them piece by piece. "Red Squadron engage targets of opportunity," Greg commanded. "Focus on their command ships, cut off their coordination." His squadron dove into the chaos. The fleet was in disarray, ships colliding with each other as they tried to maneuver in the crowded space. The humans exploited the confusion ruthlessly. Greg locked onto a cruiser and fired a missile. It struck the ship's bridge, killing the command crew instantly. The cruiser drifted out of formation, dead in space. Around him, his squadron was performing similar strikes with deadly precision. On the Liberty, Shaw watched the tactical display like a chess master studying a board. They were fighting bravely, but they were fighting stupidly. They were trying to use their numbers, bunching together, getting in each other's way. The human fleet moved like a scalpel, each ship knowing exactly where to be and when to fire. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation," his tactical officer reported. "They are attempting to scatter." "Do not let them," Shaw ordered. "Pursuit pattern Delta, run them down." The human destroyers broke formation and began hunting down fleeing ships. The electromagnetic that had proven so effective at New Haven were equally devastating here. Each shot punched through shields and armor like they were nothing. Within 2 hours, 10,000 ships were destroyed or disabled. Within 4 hours, 20,000. Within 6 hours, 35,000. Watched his empire's fleet die around him and felt cold horror creep into his heart. This was impossible. They had every advantage. How were they losing so badly? His communication officer looked at him with panic. "High Admiral, we have lost 70% of the fleet. Multiple ships are requesting permission to surrender." "The Empire does not surrender," shouted. But even as he said it, he knew it was over. He had led his people to complete and utter defeat. A human cruiser appeared alongside his flagship. A voice came over the radio. High Admiral, this is Commander Carl Johnson of the destroyer Valiant. Your shields are down. Your weapons are disabled. Surrender your ship or we will destroy it. Looked around his bridge. Half his crew was dead. Fires burned in 3 sections. His ship was a floating wreck. He had one choice left. We surrender, he said quietly. The Battle of Terra Nova ended after 8 hours of combat. The casualty count was staggering. 47,000 ships destroyed. 2.3 million soldiers and crew dead or captured. The Empire's military strength was broken completely. Human losses, 83 ships damaged or destroyed, 12,000 casualties. The galaxy watched the battle through observer ships from the Galactic Council. They saw a fleet of 50,000 ships defeated by a force 60 times smaller. They saw tactics and training triumph over raw numbers. They saw what happened when you fought a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare. The Council called another emergency session. This time, nobody talked about sanctioning humanity. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Shaw brought High Admiral to New Haven. The leader was in chains, his pride shattered. Shaw marched him through the colony, showing him the reconstruction efforts, the memorial walls with names of the dead, the orphanage filled with children who had lost parents. They stopped at the cemetery, row after row of graves, many of them small. Danny Carter was there, placing fresh flowers on his parents' graves. He looked up as the 2 admirals approached. Shaw gestured to the graves. 3,247 people. These are the casualties from your attack on New Haven. This is what your pride cost. Stared at the graves. He had seen casualty reports before. He had conquered worlds. But he had never stood among the graves. He had never looked at the faces of the survivors. He had never understood the weight of what he had done. Danny walked up to the leader. The boy looked tiny next to the tall alien, but his eyes held no fear, only sadness. "Why did you kill my parents?" Danny asked. Opened his mouth but found no words. What could he say? That he had thought humans were weak, that he had wanted resources, that he had not cared about the lives of the people he was conquering. All of those answers were true. None of them justified what he had done. "I have no answer that would satisfy you," finally said. "I was wrong. I made assumptions based on ignorance and pride. I have paid for those assumptions with my empire and the lives of millions of my people. But that does not bring your parents back." Danny nodded slowly. "No, it does not." He turned and walked away, back to where Dr. Lisa Morgan was waiting for him. Shaw looked at, "You will stand trial for war crimes. You will face justice for what you did. But first, I wanted you to understand what you destroyed. I wanted you to see the cost of underestimating humanity." The war crimes trials began on Earth 2 weeks later, and 47 other commanders faced charges of murder, genocide, and crimes against sapient beings. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. Some of the commanders showed remorse. Others remained defiant. All of them were found guilty. The sentences ranged from life imprisonment to execution, received the death penalty, received life in prison. The Empire formally surrendered. Their territory was divided among neighboring species who had been conquered by them. Reparations were paid to human colony worlds. Their military was reduced to a small defensive force. The galaxy had a new order. Ambassador Henry stood before the Galactic Council 6 months after the Battle of Terra Nova. This time, he was not defending human actions. He was proposing a new treaty. "The events of the past year have shown that the current galactic security system is broken," said. "Aggressive empires can attack weaker species without consequence. The Council watches but does not act. This must change." He presented the United Worlds Defense Pact. Under this treaty, humanity would act as military guarantors for smaller species. Any attack on a signatory would be treated as an attack on humanity. In exchange, humanity would have no territorial claims and would not interfere in internal affairs. "We are not asking to become overlords," explained. "We are offering to be guardians. We will patrol the borders. We will respond to aggression. We will ensure that what happened to New Haven never happens to another peaceful world." The debate lasted 3 days. Some species welcomed human protection. Others feared human military power. In the end, 41 species signed the treaty. It was enough to change the balance of power in the galaxy. On New Haven, life continued. Alex had been officially appointed governor. He was overseeing the reconstruction, which was progressing faster than expected. The colony was thriving again, with new families arriving every month. Lisa Morgan had opened a trauma center that treated survivors from multiple species. She worked with humans traumatized by the attack, prisoners struggling with guilt, and refugees from other conquered worlds. She still believed in healing. She had learned that sometimes healing required justice first. Danny Carter was doing better. He smiled sometimes now. He was attending school again. He still had nightmares about the attack, and Lisa suspected he always would. But he was learning to live with the grief. He was learning that you could survive terrible things and still find joy. Colonel Moore had been promoted to general and now commanded all human special forces. She trained new operators and refined tactics based on lessons learned from the New Haven rescue. She never forgot that her job was to protect civilians, especially children. Lieutenant Greg Palmer was teaching at the Naval Flight Academy. He had become one of the most decorated pilots in human history. He taught young pilots not just how to fly, but why they flew. He made sure they understood that their weapons were not toys. Every shot they fired had consequences. Admiral Shaw was appointed Supreme Commander of the United Worlds Defense Force. He oversaw a fleet that now openly patrolled known space. Human ships were a common sight at trade routes and colony worlds. Some species still feared them. Most were grateful for their presence. Shaw kept a picture on his desk. It showed Danny Carter placing flowers on his parents' graves. He looked at it every day to remind himself why he did this job. Power without purpose was tyranny. Power with purpose was protection. 1 year after the attack, a memorial ceremony was held on New Haven. Representatives from across human space attended. Several alien species sent delegates. Even some reformed came to pay respects. Danny spoke at the ceremony. He was 9 now, taller, stronger, still but healing. "My parents came to New Haven because they believed in building something new," Danny said to the crowd. "They believed in peace. They believed that different species could live together. They attacked that belief. They killed innocent people. They killed children." He paused, looking at the memorial wall with its thousands of names. "But they did not destroy what my parents believed in. We rebuilt. We are stronger now. We know that peace requires protection. We know that kindness does not mean weakness. We know that we can choose to be gentle, but we can also choose to be dangerous when we need to be." He looked directly at the camera broadcasting the ceremony across the galaxy. "My parents would want me to forgive. I am trying, but I will never forget. None of us will. We are human. We remember our dead, and we protect our children." The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. Then life went on. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador was meeting with representatives from smaller species who wanted to discuss joining the Defense Pact. The balance of power had shifted. Aggressive empires thought twice before expanding. Weaker species felt safer. It was not perfect peace. There were still conflicts. There were still problems, but the galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity had tried to hide what they were, that had forced them to remember, and now everyone knew. Do not mistake mercy for weakness. Do not assume peaceful people cannot fight, and never ever threaten their children. High above Earth, the human fleet maintained its vigilant watch. Hundreds of ships ready to deploy at a moment's notice. Not conquerors, not explorers, guardians. Admiral Shaw stood on the bridge of the Liberty and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there might be another species that thought humanity was weak. Another empire that wanted to test them. Another threat that needed to be answered. He hoped not. He truly hoped humanity could return to peaceful exploration and trade. But if someone else made the same mistake they had made, humanity would be ready. They would always be ready. Because that was what it meant to be human. They chose peace. They preferred diplomacy. They built rather than destroyed. But when pushed, when threatened, when their families were in danger, they became what they had always been. The most lethal force the galaxy had ever faced. And they would never apologize for protecting what they loved.